Good morning. Welcome. I'm Select Board Member John Trainer. For many of us, the last Monday in May makes the unofficial start of summer. A long weekend with family barbecue or a gathering of friends. But with those who served in the military, as well as their family and friends, Memorial Day holds a greater significance as it commemorates the brave men and women who lost their lives defending our great nation. Memorial Day is a day for both grief and celebration, reflecting on the tragic loss of life and recounting the courageousness of their service. At its core, the profound significance of Memorial Day can be found in the story of ordinary Americans who became extraordinary for the most simple of reasons. They loved their country so deeply, so profoundly, that they were willing to give their lives to keep it safe and secure. The respect and admiration we give our fallen pay tribute to the memory and the lives they lived. We do so by visiting their grave sites, placing flags, wreaths, or other mementos at memorials in our community. However, to truly honor their lives, we must share their stories with others and ensure their memories live on even though they are gone. Stories like that of one of our Plymouth neighbors, Lance Corporal Wayne Paul Moore. Wayne lived in Plymouth from the time he was 10, played lead guitar in his own band, the Chargers, while also attending Plymouth High. In April 1966, he joined the Marines. That September, Wayne married Linda Ann Hammer at the Zion Lutheran Church in North Plymouth. Wayne and Linda lived on Samoset Street, just down the street from his grandparents. He headed over in December for his first tour of Vietnam. Wayne returned to Plymouth a year later for a 30-day leave before heading back to Vietnam for a second tour. He was due to return home again in July 1968. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. On March 30th, 1968, Marine Company B became heavily engaged with a North Vietnamese Army battalion named near the Khe Sanh combat base. When Wayne's squad became pinned down by intense automatic weapons and mortar fire, Lance Corporal Moore unhesitantly moved across 25 meters of open terrain and aggressively assaulted an enemy bunker, destroying 2 hostile positions. As the Marines launched an attack, he repeatedly disregarded his own safety to assist the wounded and provide suppressive fire for the advancing men. While he was maneuvering across the open terrain, attempting to draw the hostile fire away from his squad, Lance Corporal Moore was mortally wounded. Lance Corporal Wayne Paul Moore, United States Marine Corps, was awarded the Silver Star posthumously by the President of the United States for conspicuous gallantry in action against the enemy while serving as a rifleman with Company B, 1st Battalion, 26th Marines, 3rd Marine Division, in connection with operations against the enemy in the Republic of Vietnam. The citation continues. By his courage, aggressive fighting spirit, and selfless devotion to duty, Lance Corporal Moore inspired all who observed him and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. gallantly gave his life in the service of his country. I tell Wayne's story today not only because it is heroic, but because Wayne's story is demonstrative of every Vietnam and service member buried here, and in places like this across America, all of whom should be recognized today. So on this Memorial Day, let us remember and honor our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters, our friends and neighbors who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their country. May they rest in peace, and may God bless America. Thank you. Let me now introduce Selectman Mark Russo.
Good morning, everyone. My task this morning is to offer some comments leading up to a few moments of silence. As I've been asked to do this for several years, I find increasingly I say the same thing every year. My only excuse, and it's a good one, is that there are some things worth saying over and over again, especially words about the fundamental principles celebrated on Memorial Day. A day of high purpose, a day to remember and appreciate and commemorate, a day to honor duty and sacrifice. And it's also a day to honor what that duty and sacrifice were and are in service of, remembering not only the sacrifices, but also the blessings those sacrifices protect and perpetuate. Bedrock principles, common values rather than staked positions, things like liberty, justice, freedom, inclusion, truth-saying, responsibility, citizenship, selfless service. Things that people have fought for centuries and centuries and continue to fight for, things to sacrifice for, things to even die for. It's quite amazing each year to stand up here on the gazebo and look out over this gathering, this panoramic view, this beautiful late spring day, the stunning town green serving the community for centuries, the wonderful array of participants, this beautiful and quite unique little town with so much history, so much sense of place, a place that retains its rural and agricultural character, and even more importantly, retains small town values and intimacy, a sense of community, shared values beyond disagreement, a sense of belonging. So surely this is a time to take a few moments to look around, to savor each other, to savor this place, to savor our sense of community, our sense of purpose, and especially to savor this opportunity to honor those who have served and sacrificed, and to honor why they did so. So we take a few moments of silence to witness, to appreciate, to savor, to deeply honor. Thanks, everyone. Please turn to a flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. with liberty and justice for all. We ask you to rise, or to continue to rise as you are able. Remove your hats as Ashley Goldberg performs the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Wow. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge the late David Chandler, Army veteran and longtime volunteer for the town. David served as chair of the Wage and Personnel Committee, or Wage and Personnel Board, was a member of the Community Preservation Committee, and delivered Meal on Wheels. Surely he will be missed. I might add that David was one of the sweetest gentlemen I know, and it is surely no understatement to say that he will be missed. May we all find comfort in the memory of this fine man. In appreciation, a gift of flowers will be presented by to his wife, Honor, by Brigitte. Thank you, Bree. Thank you, Honor. And thank you, David. Memorial Day Committee member Kathy Ferguson will now read the list of veterans past and present.
Thank you, Mark. Memorial Day is set aside to honor our military personnel who died in service to our country. In Plympton, we recognize and read the names of all service members, past and present. Vinnie Amoni, Army. Jared Anderson, Army. John Anderson, Army. Jack Andrews, Army. Arthur Belville Jr., Army. William Benavides, Navy. Lawson H. Billings, Marines. Thomas Bowes, Navy and Marines. Bruce Bradford, Navy. David Brown, Air Force. Frank P. Bush, Navy Seabees. Irv Butler, Army. Dean Chadbourne, Army. Wes Chadbourne, Coast Guard. David Chandler, Army. Elliot Chandler, Army. Charles Chase, Army. Paul Colomby, Marines. Bruce Conant, Navy. Jacob Cook, Navy. Roger Crocker, Navy. Tim Dempsey, Marines. James Denman, Navy. David Detterman, Navy. John Enright, Air Force. Kevin Follis, Marines. Daniel Ferguson, Navy. Jacob Ferguson, Navy. Norman Ferguson, Sr., Army. Ward Ferguson, Army. James Furlot, Marines. Zach Flood, Air Force. Joe Freitas, Army. Charles Fuller, Navy. Fred Fuller, Navy. Megan Gagnon, Navy. Chris Ganley, Navy. Patrick Ganley, Marines. Vincent Gillespie, Navy. Bob Gillette, Air Force. Richard Grigorenko, Air Force. Mark Halfinger, Air Force. Rick Halfinger, Air Force. Bill Hayes, Army. Paul Heidecke, U.S. Naval Reserve. Ian Hickey, Army. John R. Himmicky, Navy. Jocelyn Holmes, Navy. Robert Holt, Navy. Robert Jacobson, Air Force. Clifford Jordan, Navy. Donald Joy, Marines. Sylvester Daniel Joy, Navy. Sylvester Daniel Joy Jr., Army. Jeff Joyce, Army. Bob Carling, Navy. Barbara Kierstead, Army and Air National Guard. Edward W. Kierstead, Army. Gloria Kierstead, Air Force. James E. Kierstead, Army. Robin Kierstead, Air Force. Rufus W. Kierstead, Army. Russell Kierstead, Air Force. David Kanicolas, Marines. William King, Army. Steve Lewis, Army. Paul Lizell, Navy. Steve Lyons, Navy Seabees. Scott McLeod, Army. David Medeiros, Marines. Mario M. Martins, Navy. Carl Matheson, Army Air Force. Edward McCabe, Army. Robert Milbury, Navy. Edward Miller, Navy. Jeffrey Montello, Marines. David Morris, Navy. Jay Morris, Navy. Frank Moulton, Army. David Murphy, Marines. David Murphy Jr., Navy. Neil Murphy, Navy Seabees. Arthur O'Callahan, Air Force. Chase Perkins, Marines. Mike Perkins, Marines and Coast Guard. Robert Peters, Army National Guard. Richard Proctor, Army. Kevin Rafferty, National Guard. Raymond Reed, Army. Doug Reese, Army. Richard Reynolds, Army. Conrad Russell, Navy. Richard Ruxton, Navy Seabees. Eric Sales, Army. Carl Sales, Army. Peter Schultz, Navy. Eugene F. Seaver, Navy. Doris Silva, Coast Guard. Christine Snow, Army. Clint Stetson, Navy. William B. Stinchfield, Jr., Navy. Charlene Stober, Air Force. Alec Thompson, Marines. Gary Thompson, Air Force. Jim Thompson, Army. Wesley Tunks, Army. Al Votrino, Navy. Donald Votrino, Army. Patrick Vitt, Marines. John H. Walker, Air Force. Edmund A. Wollaston, Jr., Navy. John Wollaston, Navy. Robert Wollaston, Army. Our Veterans Agent, Roxanne Whitbeck, Navy. Howard White, National Guard. Ira White, Air Force. William L. Lanny White, Air Force and Army National Guard. Harry Weichel Jr., Marines. Rebecca Wilder, Navy. Charles Winslow, Navy Seabees. Samuel Cole Wright, Army. Edward Urowitz, Marines, and Daniel L. Zentz, Air Force. Thank you. I would like to introduce the essay winner for What Memorial Day Means to Me, Sydney Sheehy.
As human beings, there's a lot of stuff we take for granted, For instance, things such as a warm house and plenty of food, or a loving family. But one big thing that we should never take for granted is our freedom and liberty, the choice to make decisions about our own lives in political things. And many people in other countries do not have this. It's also important to know that this opportunity did not just fall into our laps. It took so much work and perseverance to earn this right, and that is something to think about when Memorial Day comes around. We all know that Memorial Day is typically celebrated to honor the fallen soldiers who died in battle, but we never really think about why these people made the decision to sacrifice their own lives. And many of these people were parents or siblings with so much to lose. And there are even stories of women disguising themselves as men just because they wanted to fight. But why? Because they wanted freedom. They wanted their children and grandchildren to grow up in a world where they could make decisions about their own lives, instead of the government making these choices for them. And that is why they wanted to fight. Also, we know that many people died in war, died for this cause. What would the world look like if all these people didn't give up their lives? Would we still have the option to vote? Would we still be able to have our own opinions? Would we have any say in our own lives at all? It's possible we would not. And what if we didn't? Would the people who refused to fight for this cause regret their decision? Would the people who did take the risk wish they hadn't because it was for nothing? It can be a little disturbing when we think about it, but fortunately, we know it did not turn out that way. And in addition to all those things we just talked about, even the little things we can't forget. Like when you go to vote for a governor or president, or talk politics with a friend, or even decide whether or not you want to participate in a national holiday, we can never forget why we were able to do these things. We can never take these things for granted because so many lives were lost for us to be able to do these things and make these decisions. And of course, that is not the only meaning of Memorial Day. There are still many more reasons to celebrate, but we should still remember the sacrifices made for our freedom, and we should still think about what the world today would look like if people did not fight. So when you go to decorate graves with flags and flowers, or attend a parade, keep in mind that we are not just doing these things for fun. We're doing it because we want to honor the fallen soldiers who gave up everything for our future, and we should never take that for granted.
Thank you, Sydney. It's now my pleasure to introduce Maeve Kinsman, who will recite In Flanders Field.
In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark a place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up a quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, for yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, the poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Thank you, Maeve. And now for our third Dead Elementary School student, I'd like to introduce Marley Mulcahy, who will recite the Gettysburg Address.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met here on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Thank you, Marley. Now I'd like to call up the Plympton Scouts Christopher Domi, Robert Domi, and Braden Gillis, who will lay the wreaths here at the gazebo, accompanied by Betsy Cupick playing taps. Thank you, Scouts and Betsy. The Memorial Day Committee would like to thank all our parade participants and the people who make this event possible. Kim Adams, Deb Anderson from the Plympton Halifax Express, DRK Mobile Toilets, Betsy Peter and Wes Cupick, Nezrela Farm in Halifax, Plymouth County Sheriff's Department, Plympton Fire Department, Plympton Garden Club, Plympton Library, Plympton Police Department, Plympton Highway Department, Sunrise Gardens, Gary Thompson, Thompson Tree Service, and Roxanne Whitbeck, Veterans Agent. I would now like to introduce our Selectman Christine Joy with closing remarks.
Thank you, Kathy. I wanted to thank the Memorial Day Committee too. It's a very small committee. They do a tremendous job putting this all together. So thank you to the 4 committee members who put today's events together. So I wanted to thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see such a great show of patriotism to honor the men and women who lost their lives for our freedom. I believe it was Ronald Reagan, I just thought of this, but I need to say it, that said that democracy was one generation away from extinction. And when I hear these wonderful essays and see so many kids out here, it gives me hope that we understand that freedom is not free and we have to fight for it, and that our young people get it, and that you're teaching them about our history and how important it is to fight for the liberties that we enjoy every day. So to conclude today's ceremony, we're going to follow the honor guard, the parade participants, through the cemetery. We'll have a moment of silence in the cemetery. And following that, there's going to be touch a truck at the fire station. They're going to have hot dogs and hamburgers and drinks for everyone. And then the library will be doing some Memorial Day crafts and also s'mores. So some good things on tap down the road after this is concluded. So once again, thank you all so much for coming to this important event. It's one of the most important things we do as a town, is to honor and remember the people who died for our freedom. So thank you very much.